when something hits so hard and so fast that you don't even have time to catch your breath. It shocks and then rewires your entire nervous system in an instant. And sometimes those shock waves can show up for years. Hi, my friend, and welcome to the Bounce Back Black Woman podcast. I'm Dell, and with God's help, I've overcome some of the toughest trials in life that I could ever have imagined. Do you find yourself struggling to move beyond a heartbreak or a hardship, asking God, why me? Well, I'm here to help women just like you heal and build the resilience to overcome life's greatest trials. If you long for joy and confidence again, this podcast is for you. So grab your headphones and those hardships. Let's talk. Hey there, my friend, and welcome back to Bounce Back Black Woman. If you've been following along, you know that we are in part 2 of our 6-part trauma series. And today's episode is all about breaking down the 3 main types of trauma that many women experience. Those 3 types of trauma are acute trauma, chronic trauma, and complex trauma. Now, last week we talked about how trauma isn't really just catastrophic events. Oftentimes, trauma is the struggles that we minimize or carry in silence for prolonged periods of time. Today, I want to give you language for the different ways that trauma can show up so that you can start to recognize your own story more clearly. Because here's the truth, friend. If you don't know what you're dealing with, you might keep minimizing it. You might keep shoving it down, thinking you just need to move past it. You might even compare it to someone else's pain and convince yourself that it doesn't count. It's not valid enough. And if you don't believe that your pain is valid, you will never give yourself permission to heal it. And that's why this conversation matters. The other reason this conversation matters isn't just for yourself. How many of you know someone that you've been really concerned about over time? You've seen what they've gone through, and you know that they've never really taken the time to process it. You see their decision making and the way that they are living their lives and are concerned for them. Sharing this episode may just be the key to helping them get back on track, because sharing is caring. So, one of the things that really opened my eyes during my time training with the Center for Healing was learning these categories. Because when I looked back at my own life, I realized that I've lived through all 3. And friend, when I say that, I'm not speaking from a textbook. I'm speaking from real moments in my own life, moments that left marks that I carried for years. And chances are, as I share these, you might start to see pieces of your own story too, or the story of someone really close to you. And my hope is that you'll realize that what you went through wasn't just life. It actually was trauma, and it deserves acknowledgement, and it deserves healing. So the first type of trauma that we're going to talk about is what's known as acute trauma. And acute trauma is that sudden, overwhelming event that is traumatic. Acute trauma comes from a single, shocking event that overwhelms your system. Think about accidents, sudden loss, unexpected violence, or life-altering news. For me, one of the clearest examples was when my husband died suddenly. Some of you may have heard this story. Some of you may have been in my life when it happened. But I remember the moment that it happened, and it was like the air was sucked out of the room. My hands went numb. My brain couldn't even process the words that I was hearing. And that is acute trauma. When something hits so hard and so fast that you don't even have time to catch your breath. It shocks and then rewires your entire nervous system in an instant. And sometimes those shock waves can show up for years. The second type of trauma is what's known as chronic trauma, and that is prolonged, repeated stressors. Chronic trauma comes from situations that drag on over time. It's the slow erosion of your spirit under ongoing stress or hardship or pain or violence. I think back to the years of prolonged poverty. I remember standing in the grocery store aisle, counting my bills and my coins, trying to figure out what I could and what I couldn't afford to buy. And that's not just stress. That is trauma. Or the long months of sitting in hospital rooms, waiting with my daughter, facing her life-threatening illness and the multitude of treatments, waiting for the doctors to come back with news, with solutions. Living in survival mode that way, always waiting for the next shoe to drop, that's chronic trauma. It doesn't knock you down all at once, but instead it wears you down little by little, day by day, until actual exhaustion becomes your normal. This kind of trauma often lives within the body. It shows up as headaches, tension, anxiety that never really lets up. And that's because your nervous system has been trained to stay on high alert for way, way too long. The next type of trauma is called complex trauma, and that is reserved for the tangled relational wounds. Complex trauma often comes from relationships or environments that are unsafe, unpredictable, or emotionally abusive. It's not just one event or one season. It's the accumulation of experiences that leave you questioning your worth or your reality, and sometimes even your own sanity. For me, this looked like navigating a relationship with a narcissist. The emotional abuse, the manipulation, the constant second guessing. That chipped away at me until I didn't even recognize myself. And I remember thinking, maybe I really am the problem. And friend, that is the cruelty of complex trauma. It attacks your sense of self. It convinces you to doubt what you know to be true. And this is why complex trauma can be the hardest to untangle sometimes, because it often comes from people or environments that were supposed to feel safe. A partner, a friend, a parent, a job, or even a faith community. It's like betrayal wrapped in familiarity. But here's the good news, my friend. No matter what type of trauma, God's presence meets us in the middle of it. The Bible doesn't promise we won't face pain. In fact, Isaiah 43:2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned." You notice that God never said you won't ever pass through waters, or you won't pass through rivers, or you won't walk through fire. He just says that when you do, He will be with you and you will be spared. Now, I see acute trauma in those sudden waters that threaten to drown us. I see chronic trauma in those rivers that keep rising day after day. And I see complex trauma in those fires that feel like they're consuming us from the inside. But in each and every one, God says, "I will be with you." And that means when the phone rings with devastating news, you're not alone. When you're sitting in the waiting room for the 100th time, you're not alone. When you're questioning your own worth because of someone else's mistreatment, you are not alone. His presence doesn't erase the pain, but it keeps the pain from destroying you. Now, why does it hurt so much? The hurt here is that so many of us don't realize how these traumas are connected. We blame ourselves for not, quote unquote, getting over a sudden loss. We wonder why long seasons of struggle still weigh us down years later. We internalize the lies that come from abusive relationships as though they are our fault. And especially as Black women, we've been told to push through, to carry it, to stay strong, to be strong. But my friend, ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. Trauma reshapes the way that we see ourselves and the world. It leaves fingerprints on our own emotions, our choices, and even our bodies. So I want you to hear me on this. Naming the type of trauma you've lived through does not lock you into victimhood. It gives you clarity. It helps you understand why it hurt so deeply, why it lasted so long, and why healing might still feel unfinished. Clarity, my friend, is the first step to taking your power back. So at this point, you might be asking, Del, what is the real takeaway here? The real takeaway is that trauma isn't one size fits all. It can be sudden, prolonged, or tangled up in relationships. But no matter what form it takes, it is valid. And when you name it, only then can you begin to heal it. And you know I have a journal prompt for you. So here it is. Which of these 3 types of trauma resonates most with your story? Write down one example from your life, if you have one, and notice how you've carried it. And then ask yourself this, and journal this. What might change if you began to see it through the lens of healing rather than just survival, or just ignoring it, or just relegating it to the past? So again, friend, this is part 2 of our trauma series, and today we named 3 main types of trauma: acute, chronic, and complex. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how to recognize trauma in your own life, the signs and patterns that you may not have connected ever before. And my friend, don't forget, I will be hosting a special Bounce Back Live session when this series is over to take this conversation even deeper. It will be an interactive workshop where I will help you identify, address, and begin healing from the struggles that we've been talking about. The only way to get the details and register is by joining my email list. You can do so by checking the show notes. There'll be a link there, or you can visit the website at bouncebackblackwoman.com and register for the emails there. So until next time, my friend, I want you to remember this. Trauma, your trauma, does not define you. God sees you. He is with you, and He is carrying you through. Well, that's it for today, my friend. I really hope this episode inspired, encouraged, or just plain comforted you. If so, please share it with a friend who might be struggling in her own healing journey. And if you take a moment to leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts, you'll help other women find encouragement through their heartbreak. Remember that God is holding your hand along this journey, and guess what? I'm holding the other. Life is short, so bounce back, Black woman.